Okay, pre-algebra, here are some one-step equations with decimals, and these have both adding and subtracting equations and multiplying and dividing equations. In an add or subtract equations, remember, in all equations, remember you're trying to get your variable alone. So right here, since we have the 10.2 plus y, the 10.2 is positive. So in order to get rid of it, I'm going to subtract it. So I'm going to write minus 10.2 underneath it. And that way I can cancel it out, and I'm left with just the plus y. So I'm going to write that down right there. And I'm subtracting, yeah. So I'm going to subtract 10.2 over here, and in adding and subtracting, you have to line up decimals. And now I see that since this one is minus and this one is minus, I'm going to add and keep the same sign. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that in. Then I'll add them together, and I get 6, 3, 1, and so y equals 13.6, negative 13.6. Looking at the next one, I'm going to do the opposite of what's with my x, and since negative 7.8 is over here, I'm going to get rid of it by going plus 7.8. That cancels that out and leaves me with that negative x, which we'll deal with in just a second. And so I'm going to write plus 7.8 here. And now I see that since this one is a negative and this one is a positive, I need to subtract them. And so I need the bigger number to be on top. That's the positive 7.8. I'm going to take away the 2.9, and since the bigger number is positive, my answer is going to be positive. Then I would subtract, and I would get 4.9, positive 4.9, and that's what negative x equals. Remember, when you have a negative in front of your x, we just need to flip the signs on both sides. So this one becomes positive, and this one becomes negative. If when you did that, your right side was negative, the x was the negative and the answer was negative, then you flip both of them and you'd have x be positive and the answer be positive. Fix that 9 there. So negative 4.9 is your final answer. Looking at some multiplication and division equations, I see that the negative 5.5 is stuck to the x, which means it's being multiplied by x. Don't try to add that. So the way that you get rid of it is you divide by 5.5. So that cancels that out. I'm going to be dividing 2.2 by 5.5. So I'm going to drop the 2.2 down inside. And then I'm going to move this decimal over 1 to make it 55. And I need to move this decimal over 1. Then I'll put it at. And 55 doesn't go into 22, so I'm going to add a 0. And 55 goes into 220. If I do 4, I bet that's going to be it. 4 times 5 is 20, plus 2 more is 220, so it is 0.4. That would cancel or finish up. And since this one was positive, this one was negative, my answer is negative 0.4. So that's it, because all you were left with was x over here. Looking at the next one, a negative 0.4 or 0.474x is stuck to the x, and so to get rid of it, I need to divide by 0.74. So I'm going to divide this by 0.74, drop that down into the box, and negative 4.218. I'm going to move my decimal over 2 places, and I get 74 into 421.8. Move my decimal up. I know since this was positive and this is negative, my answer will be negative. 74 goes into 421 probably 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 7 is 35, plus 2 is 37. Go ahead and subtract, see what I get. And I get 51, so that was correct. Let's drop down the 8. 74 into 518, I bet is 7 times. 7 goes into 51 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. And then 7 times 7 is 49, plus 2 is 51. So that was correct. And I knew since this one was negative, the answer was negative. So x equals negative 5.7. Looking at our last example, when it has division on the bottom of the x like this, the way that you get rid of it is to multiply by it. So I'm going to write times 0.08, negative 0.8 is what I'm going to say. That cancels those out. It leaves me with just my x, and I'm just going to be multiplying by negative 0.8. Remember, you multiply or divide by whatever is with the x, and if a negative is with the x, you multiply or divide by the negative. Since the top one's positive, this one's negative, the answer will be negative. 8 times 4 is 32. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 3 is 19. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 1 is 9. I have 2 numbers after the decimal, so I'm going to move it over twice, and I get negative 9.92 as my answer. And that is it. Those are all the examples, so if you have any questions, just let me know, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.